Welcome to the Department of Distance and Continuing Education, University of Delhi. Master of Business Administration, Semester 1, Core Course MBA FT 6103, Managerial Economics. Lesson 2, Theories of Demand. 2.1, Learning Objectives. To introduce the concept of demand and supply, to introduce the concept of utility and revealed preference hypothesis, to understand the use of demand forecasting in managerial economics. 2.2 Introduction. This unit will contain an analysis of demand, an indifference curve, and demand forecasting. The reader will understand that demand evaluation is an essential phase of economic and financial analysis. The producers produce and provide items to meet demand. When demand and supply are equal, the goods market of an economy is said to be in equilibrium. The demand is not continually static. The adjustments in demand or elasticity of demand offer room for managerial choice making, like what to produce, how much to produce, when to produce, and where to distribute the products. 2.3 Theory of Demand. Demand for a commodity refers to the quantity of the commodity that people are willing to purchase at a specific price per unit of time. Other factors such as price of related goods, income, taste, and preferences, advertising, etc., being constant. Demand includes the desire to buy the commodity accompanied by the willingness to buy it and sufficient purchasing power to purchase it. According to Chapman, demand is the quantitative expression of preferences. According to Henson, quantity of a commodity that will be purchased at a particular price and not merely the desire of a thing. Clearly, demand may be defined as the quantity of goods or services desired by an individual, backed by their ability and willingness to pay. It may be noted that demand is not the same as desire or need. For example, many people who cannot afford a motor car would like one, and doubtless many children need more milk than they get. But unless desire or need is backed up by ability and willingness to pay, it does not affect the volume of sales. The demand for a commodity at a given price is the amount of it that would in fact be bought at that price. Types of demand. Number 1. Price demand. Price demand refers to those quantities of goods which are demanded by a consumer at various price during a particular time period. Ceteris paribus, that is, other things being equal. When price of goods increases, its demand decreases, and vice versa. Ceteris paribus means at the point of time when consumer demands goods, income, taste, interest, and behavior of consumer remain unchanged or constant. Due to inverse relationship between price and demand, slope of price demand curve is negative. That is, it falls from left to right. Second, income demand. Generally, income demand is related to the quantity of goods and services demanded by a consumer at different income levels in a given time period when other things remain constant. Income demand curve is also known as Engel's curve. Income demand depends on the nature of goods. Goods can be divided into two groups. One is superior or normal goods and another one is inferior goods. Third, cross demand. Cross demand refers to the relationship between quantity demanded for good A and the price of related good B, other things being equal. In simple words, by cross demand we mean the change in the quantity demanded for a commodity without any change in its price but due to a change in the price of related goods, that is B commodity. The related goods can either be substitute goods or complementary goods. The demand curve in the case of substitute goods will be upward sloping, while the demand curve for complementary goods will be downward sloping. Fourth, other kinds of demand. 1. Joint demand and composite demand. The demand for one commodity leading to the demand for another is known as joint demand. For example, demand for ink and paper is joint demand. On the other hand, demand is said to be composite when a thing is demanded for more than one purpose. The demand for coal and rubber is composite as they are used for several purposes. Second, derived demand. Demand for a factor production is not direct demand. It is an indirect or derived demand. Derived demand is a demand which arises or is derived from the demand for some other commodity or factor. Demand for labor or raw material is dependent on or derived from the demand of that final product in which this factor is used. 2.4 Law of Demand. The law of demand is one of the best known and most important laws of economic theory. This law is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. This law states the relationship between the quantity demanded and the price. Marshall explains the law as follows. The amount of demanded increases with a fall in price and diminishes with a rise in price. It means that the quantity demanded increases with a fall in price and vice versa. In other words, when the price of a commodity falls, the demand for the commodity increases, and when the price rises, the demand for the commodity decreases. However, it can be explained as follows. Demand for commodity X is equals to the function of price of the commodity X, price of the related commodities, income of the consumer, and taste. Assumption. According to Stigler and Boulding, the law of demand is based on the following assumptions. 1. There should be no change in the income of the consumers. Second, there should be no change in the taste or preference of the consumers. Third, price of the related commodities should remain unchanged. Fourth, there should be no change in the size of population. Fifth, the commodity in question should be a normal one. Sixth, there should be perfect competition in the market. Explanation of the law. The law of demand states that there is an inverse relation between the price and the demand of a commodity. The demand of a commodity is higher at a lower price and lower at a higher price. This relationship is not proportional. Hence, it does not mean that when prices fall by 1.5, the demand for goods will double. It simply shows the direction of change in demand as a result of a change in price. It is obvious from the table that with the fall in the price per kg, quantity demanded rises, and as the price goes on rising, quantity demand goes on falling. Example, when the price of apples is rupees 8 per kg, the quantity demanded of apples is 20 kgs. And as the price falls from rupees 8 to rupees 2, the quantity demanded of apples increases from 20 to 50 kg, thereby establishing a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. In this figure, along x-axis we measured demand for apples and along y-axis prices of apples. If price decreases, then quantity increases. Why the demand curve slopes downward? There are several reasons responsible for the inverse price-demand relationship, which have been explained as follows. 1. Law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of demand is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility, which states that as the consumer purchases more and more units of a commodity, the utility derived from each successive unit goes on decreasing. It means that as the price of the commodity falls, the consumer purchases more of the commodity so that his marginal utility from the commodity falls to be equal to the reduced price and vice versa. Second, substitution effect. Substitution effect also leads the demand curve to slope from left to right. As the price of a commodity falls, price of substitute goods remain the same. The consumer will buy more of that commodity. For instance, tea and coffee are substitute goods. If the price of tea goes down, the consumer may substitute coffee with tea, although the price of coffee remains the same. Therefore, with the fall in price, the demand will increase due to the favorable substitution effect. Third, income effect. Another reason for the downward slope of the demand curve is the income effect. As the price of the commodity falls, the real income of the consumer goes up. Fourth, new consumers. When the price of a commodity falls, many other consumers who were not consuming that commodity previously will start consuming it. As a result, total market demand goes up. Fifth, psychological effects. When the price of a commodity falls, people tend to buy more. This is both natural and psychological. Therefore, the demand increases with the fall in prices. For example, the price of silk falls, it is purchased for all family members. Importance of the law. The law of demand has the following theoretical and practical importance in economics. Number 1. Price determination. The law of demand is useful to the monopolist in fixing the price of their products. The monopolist comes to know how much the quantity of the commodity will increase or decrease with the change in price. Second, importance of the consumer. The law of demand tells us that with the fall in price, the consumer will buy more of the commodity. On the other hand, with the increase in price, he will buy less of that commodity. Thus, the consumer maximizes his satisfaction. Third, importance to finance minister. The finance minister, while imposing the tax, keeps in mind the law of demand. It is the law through which he comes to know the effect of tax on the amount demanded of various commodities. Fourth, importance for producers. The law of demand provides guidelines to the producers regarding the production of goods whose prices have reduced. Generally, the law of demand states that, other things being equal, with the rise in price, quantity demanded falls, and with the fall in price, quantity demanded increases. Therefore, it is for the welfare of the producers to concentrate on the production of those goods for which prices have been reduced. 2.5 Utility function. 2.5.1 Utility. The term utility refers to that quality of a commodity by virtue of which our wants are satisfied. In other words, want satisfying feature of a good is called the utility of a good. Utility can also be defined as value in use of commodity, as the satisfaction one gets from the consumption of a good is its value in use. When commodities are used, they also give pleasure or pain to the consumer. Whatever the effects of goods may be, they satisfy human wants. As long as goods satisfy human wants, they are said to possess utility. It has been observed that non-material goods like the services of doctors, teachers, and artists satisfy human wants as much as material goods. Thus, where there is utility, there are non-material goods. According to Professor Hebden, utility is the ability of a good to satisfy a want. According to J.S. Nicholson, utility may be the quality that makes a thing desirable. 2.5.2 Concepts of Utility. The concepts of utility can be explained on the basis of the consumption of a commodity. Number 1. Initial utility. Initial utility means the utility derived from the consumption of its first unit. In other words, when the consumption of a commodity is made and the consumer gets the utility at the first stage, it is known as initial utility. It is always positive. For instance, when a man starts to consume taking chapati or roti, the utility from the first unit obtained is the initial utility. Second, marginal utility. It refers to the additional utility on account of the consumption of an additional unit of a commodity. According to Professor Balding, the marginal utility that results from a unit increase in consumption. Professor Chapman says marginal utility is an addition made to total utility by consuming one more unit of a commodity. Marginal utility can be expressed as marginal utility of nth unit is equals to total utility of n units minus the total utility of n minus 1 units. For example, when a consumer consumes one roti, he gets total utility equal to 10 units. By consuming second roti, total utility becomes 18 units, that is 10 plus 8. However, marginal utility of the second roti is 8 units, that is 18 minus 10. There are three types of marginal utility. Number 1. Positive marginal utility. When the total utility increases with the consumption of a commodity, it is called positive marginal utility. Let us suppose when one eats roti, one gets total utility at every additional unit as 10, 18, 24, 28, 30 and so on. We see that total utility is increasing constantly. This is a case of positive marginal utility. Second, zero marginal utility. Zero marginal utility is defined as no addition to the total utility by the consumption of an additional unit. In the above example, total utility reaches 30 by using the fifth unit of an article, that is roti. One gets the same total utility, that is 30, at the next unit, that is the sixth roti. Thus, the consumer gets zero marginal utility. Third, negative marginal utility. In the above example, when the consumer uses the seventh unit, the total utility diminishes by using one more unit. That is, from the sixth to the seventh unit, the total utility is 28 units. Therefore, at this stage, the consumer gets negative marginal utility after obtaining maximum satisfaction from the commodity, that is roti. Third, total utility. Total utility means total satisfaction received by the consumer from the consumption of all units taken together at one time. According to Leftwich, total utility refers to the entire amount of satisfaction from consuming various quantities of a commodity. In mathematical terms, total utility is a direct function of the number of units of a commodity. It can be written as total utility of a commodity X is equals to the function of Qx, where Qx is the quantity of a commodity X. It is clear from the table that total utility increases when large number of units are consumed by the consumer. At the first unit, total utility is equal to 10, which is the initial utility, and further it is increased to 18, 24, 28 and 30. Here we must remember that this increase is at a diminishing rate, but still has positive utility. At the sixth unit, total utility is constant, that is 30 units. and later on starts declining at an increasing rate. At the 7th unit, total utility is recorded as 28 units. Therefore, we can say that total utility goes on increasing as long as the marginal utility of a commodity remains positive. On the other side, at the first unit of consumption, marginal utility is equal to 10, and on successive units, it goes on falling until 5th unit of commodity is consumed. At the 6th unit, marginal utility becomes 0, the point of full satisfaction or saturation. Here, the consumer gets maximum satisfaction. At the 7th unit, marginal utility is negative 2. This is the point of oversatisfaction. 2.5.3 Approaches of the consumer behavior. There are two approaches of consumer behavior. First, cardinal approach, given by Marshallian view. Second, ordinal approach, Hickian view. Cardinal approach. Under cardinal approach, there are two main laws. That is, first, law of diminishing marginal utility, and second, law of equimarginal utility. First, law of diminishing marginal utility. This law was first given by the French engineer Gaussen. According to this law, as an individual continues to consume a commodity, the marginal utility obtained from its additional units goes on diminishing. For example, when a hungry man consumes roti, the utility is maximum for the first unit of roti. At the second unit, by eating a second roti, one gets less utility. This process goes on and utility at every step continues to diminish. Therefore, it is called Gaussen's first law. Dr. Marshall explained the law in a better way. He says that the additional benefit that a person derives from a given increase in his stock of things diminishes with every increase in the stock that he already has. According to Chapman, the more we have of something, the less we want additional increments of it, or the more we want not to have additional increments of it. According to Samuelson, as the amount consumed of a good increase, the marginal utility of the good leads to decrease. Assumptions. The main assumptions of the law are as follows. First, utility can be measured in cardinal number like 1, 2, 3 and so on. Second, the utility of a commodity depends on its own quantity rather than the quantities of other commodities. Third, the law applies only when the commodity is continuously consumed. Fourth, all units consumed by the consumer are same in all respect, that is, same color, shape, taste, etc. Fifth, marginal utility of money remains constant. Sixth, there is no change in the price of the commodity and its substitute. Seventh, there is no change in the taste, habits, fashion of the consumer. Explanation of the law. Suppose a person is thirsty and the price of water is 0. He takes 1 glass of water, which gives him great satisfaction. We can say the first glass of water has great utility for him. He then takes second glass of water. The utility of the second glass of water is less than that of first glass of water. The utility declines because the edge of his thirst has been blunted to a great extent. If he drinks third glass of water, the utility of the third glass will be less than that of second and so on. The utility goes on diminishing with the consumption of every successive glass of water till it drops down to 0. It is the position of consumer's equilibrium or maximum satisfaction. If the consumer is forced further to take a glass of water, it leads to disutility, causing total utility to decline. The marginal utility will become negative. A rational consumer will stop taking water at the point at which marginal utility becomes negative, even if the good is free. In short, when a good is free, a consumer increases consumption of a good so long its additional units provide him positive marginal utility. The table above shows that the first glass of water to a thirsty man gives 20 units of utility. When he takes second glass of water, the marginal utility goes down to 12 units. And when he consumes fifth glass of water, the marginal utility drops down to 0. And if the consumption of water is forced further from this point, the utility changes into disutility, that is -3. Here, it may be noted that the utility of the successive units consumed diminishes not because they are of inferior in quality than that of others. We assume that all the units of a commodity consumed are exactly alike. In the figure, on OX we measure units of a commodity consumed, and on OY is shown the marginal utility derived from them. The marginal utility of the first glass of water is called initial utility. It is equal to 20 units. The marginal utility of the fifth glass of water is 0. It is called the satiety point. The marginal utility of the sixth glass of water is -3. The marginal utility curve here lies below the OX axis. The utility curve MM falls from left down to the right, showing that the marginal utility of the success units of glasses of water is falling. When a good is scarce and so priced, the consumer will increase the consumption of a commodity up to the extent where his marginal utility for the good equals the price which he has to pay. That is, marginal utility is equals to price. Exceptions of the law. The law is universally applicable if all assumptions are fully met. But in practical life, it is not so. Therefore, there are exceptions, which are briefly discussed below. First, rare things. The foremost exception to the law is that it does not apply in the case of certain rare things like stamps, coins, etc. But this exception cannot be regarded as genuine because the assumption of homogeneity is violated. Second, public goods. In the case of public utility goods, marginal utility from additional increases. But this assumption is contrary to the law of diminishing marginal utility. Third, misers. It is stated that as the stock of money with a miser increases, the greed for acquiring more and more money increases. It means the law of diminishing marginal utility does not apply in the case of misers. Fourth, things of display. The present law is also not applicable in the case of display. For instance, in case of fashion and taste, the law is not properly applicable. Fifth, discontinuous consumption. The law of diminishing marginal utility does not apply if there is time lag between the use of commodity. It requires the continuous consumption for its application. Sixth, music or poetry. It is said that by hearing music or poetry for the second time, we get more satisfaction than the first hearing. Thus, the hearing of music and poetry is another exception of the law. Second, law of equimarginal utility. The law of equimarginal utility was propounded in the 19th century by a French engineer named Gaussen. The law is nothing but an extension of the law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility applies in the case of a single commodity. In reality, the consumer does not consume one commodity but a number of commodities at a given time. Therefore, for this purpose, we have to extend the law of diminishing marginal utility, which we call the law of equimarginal utility. It is also called Gaussen's second law. Moreover, different economists have called it differently. Dr. Marshall called it law of maximum satisfaction. Statement of the law. The law of equimarginal utility may be defined as follows. According to Dr. Marshall, if a person has a thing which he can put to several uses, he will distribute it among these uses in such a way that it has the same marginal utility in all. According to Samuelson, a consumer gets maximum satisfaction when the ratio of marginal utilities of all commodities and their price is equal. According to Lipse, The household maximizing its utility will so allocate its expenditure between commodities that the utility of the last penny spent on each is equal. According to Hicks, utility will be maximized when the marginal utility of expenditure in each direction brings the same increment of utility. It means marginal utility of 1 is equals to marginal utility of 2, which is equals to marginal utility of 3. Assumption. The law of equimarginal utility is based on the following assumptions. First, every consumer wants to maximize his satisfaction. Second, price of the commodity remains constant. No change in the price of substitutes or complementary goods. Third, income of the consumer remains constant. Fourth, commodities can be divided and subdivided into the required commodities. Fifth, marginal utility of money remains constant. Sixth, consumer has a rational behavior. Seventh, no change in money, taste, fashion, habits, and customs of the consumer. Explanation of the law. Let us suppose that the consumer must spend rupees 5 on two different commodities, viz. Mangoes and oranges. Further, we assume that the price of each of the commodities is rupee 1. Marginal utilities of different units of mangoes and oranges are shown in the table. Let us assume that at one time the consumer spends his income on one commodity. The consumer spends first rupee on oranges, which yields him 10 units of marginal utility. From the second rupee, he gets utility equal to 8 units. Now as one goes on spending more and more, the marginal utility goes on falling. On the other hand, if the consumer spends first rupee on mangoes, he gets 8 unit of utility. But as one goes on spending more and more on oranges, the marginal utility of oranges goes on diminishing. Moreover, if the consumer spends rupees 5 on oranges, then he will buy only oranges, which gives 30 units of utility. Thus, as the consumer wants to buy two commodities, he will spend first rupee on oranges and second on mangoes. Again, third on oranges. Similarly, the consumer will spend fourth and fifth on the mangoes and oranges respectively. In this way, the consumer enjoys maximum satisfaction. In the figure, units of money have been taken on the x-axis and the marginal utility of both commodities on the y-axis. The figure depicts that at a given level of income, that is rupees 5, the consumer would spend rupees 3 on oranges and rupee 2 on mangoes. In the case of mangoes, the consumer is in equilibrium at point P, while it is at point P1 in the case of oranges. The consumer finds that when Q is equals to Q1, he gets maximum satisfaction. Moreover, if the consumer spends rupees 3 on oranges, the utility gained is equals to the PMNE. On the other hand, if the consumer spends rupees 2 on oranges, the loss in utility will be equal to LMNP. So it is clear that the loss of utility is greater than the gain. Thus, it is not worthwhile to buy any other proportion than 3 units of oranges and 2 units of mangoes. Modern statement of the law. Modern economists have given a new name to this law as law of proportionality. According to them, a consumer yields maximum satisfaction only when the ration of marginal utility derived from different goods and their prices is equal. For example, the price of commodity X is paise 50 and the consumer buys 10 units. The consumer gets 10 units of marginal utility from 10th unit. In the same way, if the price of the commodity X is paise 25 and the consumer buys 12 units, he gets 3 units from the 12th unit. The formula to calculate the marginal utility according to modern economists is as follows. mu of A upon P of A is equals to mu of B upon P of B is equals to so on and so forth till mu of N upon P of N. Importance of the law. The significance of the law are as follows. First, consumption. Every consumer wants to get the most satisfaction from their limited income. The income of the consumer is limited, while his wants are multiple. Therefore, if a consumer spends his limited income on different commodities in such a way that the last unit of the commodity yields equal marginal utility, he will get maximum satisfaction. Second, exchange. The law also applies to exchange. Exchange means replacing of goods which gives him less utility for another which yields more utility. Third, production. Every producer in the market wants to get maximum profits. Therefore, in order to achieve this objective, the producer has to use several factors for production. Fourth, distribution. The law of equimarginal utility gives an explanation about the distribution of national income. Distribution is done in such a way that in the long period, every factor of production gets its share according to its marginal productivity. Therefore, in order to have such a distribution, factors have to be substituted. Limitations or exceptions of the law. The following are the limitations of the law. First, irrational behavior of the consumer. This law is based on the assumption that every consumer is rational, but in real sense, consumer acts in irrational manner. His behavior is greatly influenced by habits, advertisements, fashion, etc. Under these cases, he fails to avail maximum satisfaction. Second, utility is subjective. The law stands nowhere as consumer's behavior is based on his psychology. It is difficult to measure one's psychology or utility as it is possible in case of heat or energy. Third, unrealistic assumption. This law is based on unrealistic assumptions like homogeneous products, constant fashion, taste, habits, etc. In reality, these factors continuously change in the real world. Fourth, marginal utility of money is not constant. The law of equimarginal utility is based on the assumption that marginal utility is constant. In real life, it is not so. The utility of money goes on decreasing with the passage of time when there is a change in the price of commodity. Fifth, ignorance of the consumer. It is a fact that a common consumer does not possess complete knowledge of all commodities and their prices in the market. Moreover, prices are subject to change. Therefore, ignorance of the consumer is the biggest hindrance. So, the law does not apply properly. Sixth, invisible good. Another limitation of the law is that it is not applicable in case of invisible goods. There are certain goods which cannot be divided or subdivided, that is TV, car, fridge, etc. If these commodities are divided, they will lose their utility. In such cases, this law is not applicable. Seventh, durable goods. Still another limitation of the law persists as it is difficult to measure the utility in respect of durable goods such as car and machinery. Eighth, scarcity of the good. In the present world, there is acute shortage of some commodities and the consumer is compelled to purchase an alternative or substitute goods in the market. In such cases, it is very difficult to measure the utility of such commodities. 2.6. Revealed preference theory. An economic theory of consumption behavior which asserts that the best way to measure consumer preferences is to observe their purchasing behavior. Revealed preference theory works on assumption that consumers have considered a set of alternatives before making a purchasing decision. Thus, given that a consumer chooses one option out of the set, this option must be the preferred option. Revealed preference theory, pioneered by American economist Paul Samuelson, is a method for comparing the influence of policies on consumer behavior. These models assume that the preferences of consumer can be revealed by their purchasing habits. Revealed preference theory came about because existing theories of consumer demand were based on diminishing marginal rate of substitution. This diminishing MRS relied on the assumption that consumers make consumption decisions to maximize their utility. While utility maximization was not a controversial assumption, the underlying utility functions could not be measured with great certainty. Revealed preference theory was a means to reconcile demand theory by defining utility functions by observing behavior. Hence, Samuelson's theory is based on the premise that choice reveals preference. Keeping this fact in mind, a consumer buys a combination of two goods because he likes this combination in relation to others, because it may be cheaper than the other. Suppose the consumer buys combination A rather than other combination, say for example D. It means that he reveals his preference for combination A. He can do this for two reasons. First, combination A may be cheaper than the other combinations B, C, D. Second, combination A may be dearer than others, and even then he likes it more than other combinations. In such a situation, it can be said that A is revealed to be preferred to B, C, D, or B, C, D are revealed inferior to A. Given the income and prices of the two goods X and Y, LM is the price income line of the consumer, which shows the various combination of X and Y on the given price income situation LM. In other words, the consumer can choose any combination between A and B on the line LM or between C and D below the line. If he chooses A, it is revealed preferred to B. Combination C and D are revealed inferior to A because they are below the price income line LM. But combination E is beyond the reach of the consumer, being dearer for him because it lies above his price income line LM. Therefore, A is revealed preferred to other combinations. Assumptions. The revealed preference hypothesis is based on the following assumptions. First, the consumer tastes do not change. Second, his choice for a combination reveals his preference for that combination of goods. Third, the consumer chooses only one combination at a given price income line. Fourth, he prefers a combination of more goods to less in any situation. Fifth, it assumes consistency in consumer behavior. If A is preferred to B in one situation, B cannot be preferred to A in the other situation. This is the two-term consistency, according to Hicks, which must satisfy two conditions on a straight line curve. A, if A is left of B, B must be right of A. Second, if A is right of B, B must be left of A. This is the Hicks direct consistency test under strong ordering. Sixth, this theory is based on the assumption of transitivity. Transitivity, however, refers to the three-term consistency. If it is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then the consumer must prefer A over C. This assumption is necessary for the revealed preference theory if consumer is to make a consistent choice from given alternative situations. 2.7 Indifference curve. The indifference curve analysis measures ordinal utility. It explains consumer behavior in terms of his preferences or rankings for different combinations of two goods, say X and Y. An indifference curve is drawn from the indifference schedule of the consumer. The latter shows the various combinations of the two commodities such that the consumer is indifferent to those combinations. An indifference schedule is a list of combinations of two commodities, the list being so arranged that a consumer is indifferent to the combination, preferring none of the others. A curve, which is a diagrammatic presentation of indifference set. It shows different combination of two commodities like apples and oranges, between which a consumer is indifferent. Each combination A, B, C and D on the curve I of 1 offers him the same level of satisfaction. 2.8 Budget line. The budget line is an important element analysis of consumer behavior. The indifference map shows people's preferences for the combination of two goods. The actual choices they will make, however, depend on their income. The budget line is drawn as a continuous line. It identifies the options from which the consumer can choose the combination of goods. In the figure given alongside, the line EF shows the various combination of goods the consumer can purchase. This line is called the budget line. It shows 6 possible combinations of packets of biscuits and packets of coffee, which a consumer can buy weekly. These combinations are indicated by points A, B, C, D, E and F. Point A indicates that 10 packets of biscuits can be bought if the entire income of $60 is devoted to buy a biscuit. Similarly, point F shows to purchase 5 packets of coffee for the whole income of $60 per week. The budget line AF indicates all the combination of packets of biscuits and coffee which a consumer can purchase in the assumed price and income. In case a consumer decides to purchase combination of goods inside the budget line such as G, then it involves a total outlay that is smaller than the amount of $60 per week. Any point outside the budget line such as H requires an outlay larger than the consumer's weekly income of $60. The slope of the budget line indicates how many packets of biscuits a buyer give up to purchase one more packet of coffee. For example, the slope at point B on the budget line is change of y upon change of x, or 2 packets of biscuits equals to 1 packet of coffee. This indicates that a move from B to C involves sacrificing 2 packets of biscuits to gain an additional 1 packet of coffee. Since AF budget line is straight, the slope is constant at 2 packets of biscuits per 1 packet of coffee at all points along the time. 2.8.1 Shifts in budget line. The price line is determined by the income of the consumer and the prices of goods in the market. If there is a change in the income of the consumer or in the prices of goods, the price line shifts in response to an exchange in the two factors. Income changes. When there is a change in the income of the consumer, the prices of goods remaining the same, the price line shifts from the original position with the rise in income. A fall in the level of income, product prices remaining unchanged, the price line shifts left side from the original position. With the higher income, the consumer can purchase more of both goods than before, but the cost of one good in terms of the other remain the same. In the above figure, change in income is shown when product price remain unchanged. The rise in income results in a parallel upward shift in the budget line from L1M1 to L2M2. The consumer is able to purchase more of both the goods A and B. Price changes. Now let us consider that there is a change in the price of one good. The income of the consumer and price of the other good is held constant. When there is a fall in the price of one good, say commodity A, the consumer purchases more of that good than before. A price change causes the budget line to rotate at point L in the figure. It becomes flatter and gives the new budget line from LM1 to LM2. Flatter budget line means that the relative price of the good A on the horizontal axis is lower. If the greater amount is spent on the purchase of good A, the consumer can buy increased OM of 2 amount of good A. 2.8.2 Consumers equilibrium through indifference curve analysis. The term consumers equilibrium refers to the amount of goods and services which the consumer may buy in the market given his income and given prices of goods in the market. The aim of the consumer is to get maximum satisfaction from his money income. A consumer is said to be in equilibrium at a point where the price line is touching the highest attainable indifference curve from below. Conditions. Thus, the consumer's equilibrium under the indifference curve theory must meet the following two conditions. First, a given price line should be tangent to an indifference curve or marginal rate of satisfaction of good A for goods Y must be equal to the price of the two goods. That is, marginal rate of substitution of X and Y is equals to price of X upon price of Y. Second, the second order condition is that indifference curve must be convex to the origin at the point of tangency. Assumptions. The following assumptions are made to determine the consumer's equilibrium position. First, rationality. The consumer is rational. He wants to obtain maximum satisfaction given his income and prices. Second, utility is ordinal. It is assumed that the consumer can rank his preference according to the satisfaction of each combination of goods. Third, consistency of choice. It is also assumed that the consumer is consistent in the choice of goods. Fourth, perfect competition. There is perfect competition in the market from where the consumer is purchasing the goods. Fifth, total utility. The total utility of the consumer depends on the quantities of the goods consumed. The consumer's consumption decision is explained by combining the budget line and the indifference map. A budget line or price line represents the various combinations of two goods which can be purchased with a given money income and assumed prices of goods. 2.9 Demand functions. The demand function is a function that describes how much of a commodity will be purchased at the prevailing prices of that commodity and related commodities, alternative income levels, and alternative values of other variables affecting demand. Price is not the only factor that determines the level of demand for a good. Another important factor is income. The rise in income will lead to an increase in demand for normal commodities. A few goods are named as inferior goods for which demand will fall when income rises. Another important factor that influences the demand for a good is the price of other goods. Other factors that affect the demand for a good apart from the above mentioned factors are 1. Changes in population, 2nd, changes in fashion, 3rd, changes in taste, and 4th, changes in advertising. A change in demand occurs when one or more of the determinants of demand change, and it is expressed in the following equation. Q of dx is equals to function of px, pr, y, t, w, e of p and advertisement, where qd of x is equals to quantity demanded of good x, px is equals to the price of good x, PR is the price of a related good, Y is the income level of the consumer, W is the wealth of the consumers, E of Y is equals to expected income, E of P is equals to expected price. The above mentioned demand function expresses the relationship between the demand and other factors. The quantity demanded of commodity X varies according to the price of the commodity, income of the consumer, the price of related commodity, wealth of the consumer, taste and preference of the consumers, and advertisement made by the firm selling the product. 2.9.1 Determinants of demand. There are many economic, social, and political factors or determinants which greatly influence the demand for a commodity. Some of these factors are as follows. First, price of a commodity. The foremost significant factor which influences the demand is the price of the commodity. As the price of a commodity changes, it causes an inverse change in the demand for commodity. Second, price of related goods. Demand for commodity is also influenced by the change in the price of related goods. These goods are of two types, that is, substitute goods or complementary goods. Substitute goods are those which can replace each other in use like tea and coffee, while the complementary goods are those which are jointly consumed as petrol and car, etc. Third, income of the consumer. Income of the consumer is another factor which influences demand. Generally, there is direct relation between income of the consumer and his demand. The demand for normal goods rises with an increase in income and falls with the fall in income. In the case of inferior goods, the demand falls with an increase in income and rises with decrease in income. Fourth, wealth of the consumer. The amount demanded of a commodity is also influenced by the wealth of the consumer. Level of accumulated wealth has a positive impact on the demand of a commodity. Higher the wealth of the consumer, higher will be the demand of the product. Fifth, taste and preferences. Taste and preferences of the consumer also influence the demand to a great extent. They include fashion, habits, customs, advertisement, climate, new inventions, etc. 2.9.2 Elasticity of demand. In economics, the term elasticity means a proportionate change in one variable relative to a proportionate change in another variable. The quantity demanded of a good is affected by changes in the price of the good, changes in the price of other goods, changes in income, and changes in other factors. Elasticity is a measure of just how much of the quantity demanded will be affected by a change in price or income. Elasticity of demand is a technical term used by the economist to describe the degree of responsiveness of the demand for a commodity due to a fall in its price. A fall in price leads to an increase in quantity demanded and vice versa. The elasticity of demand may be as follows. First, price elasticity. Second, income elasticity. And third, cross elasticity. First, price elasticity. The response of consumers to a change in the price of a commodity is measured by the price elasticity of the commodity demand. The responsiveness of changes in quantity demanded due to changes in price is referred to as price elasticity of demand. The price elasticity of demand is measured by dividing the percentage change in quantity demanded by the percentage change in price. Price elasticity is equals to proportionate change in the quantity demanded upon proportionate change in price, which is equals to percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price, which can be written as follows. The following are the possible combination of changes in price and quantity demanded. The slope of each combination is depicted in the following graphs. First, perfectly elastic demand, ED is equals to infinity. A demand is perfectly elastic when a small increase in the price of a good its quantity to zero. Perfect elasticity implies that individual producers can sell all they want at a ruling price but cannot charge a higher price. If any producer tries to change even 1 penny more, no one would buy this product. Second, perfectly inelastic demand, ED is equals to 0. When the quantity demanded of a good does not change at all to whatever change in the price, the demand is said to be perfectly inelastic, or the demand of elasticity is to be 0. Third, unitary elasticity of demand, ED is equals to 1. When the quantity demanded of a good changes by exactly the same percentage as price, the demand is said to have a unitary elasticity. Fourth, elastic demand. If 1% change in price causes greater than a 1% change in quantity demanded of a good, the demand is said to be elastic. Second, income elasticity. According to Steiner and Hodge, income elasticity of demand shows the way in which a consumer's purchase of any good changes as a result of change in his income. It shows the responsiveness of a consumer's purchase of a particular commodity to a change in the quantity demanded to the percentage change in income of the consumer. Cross price elasticity of demand is equals to percentage change in quantity of good A upon percentage change in the price of good B. The following are the various types of income elasticity. First, zero income elasticity. The increase in income of the individual does not make any difference in the demand for that commodity. That is, elasticity of income is equals to 0. Second, Negative income elasticity. The increase in the income of consumers leads to less purchase of those goods. That means the income elasticity is less than zero. Third, unitary income elasticity. The change in income leads to the same percentage of change in the demand for the good. That is, income elasticity is equals to 1. Fourth, income elasticity is greater than 1. The change in income increases the demand for that commodity more than the change in the income. Fifth, income elasticity is less than 1. The change in income increases the demand for the commodity but at a lesser percentage than the change in the income. Third, cross elasticity. It is the ratio of the percentage change in the quantity demanded of Y to a given percentage change in the price of the related commodity X. It is a measure of relative change in the quantity demanded of a commodity due to change in the price of its substitute or complement. It can be expressed as cross price elasticity of demand is equals to percentage change in a quantity of good A upon percentage change in the price of good B. If two commodities are unrelated, the increase in the price of one good does not result in any change in the demand for the other goods. For example, the decrease in the price of salt does not make any change in the demand for car. Types of cross elasticity of demand. First, positive. When goods are substitute of each other, then cross elasticity of demand is positive. In other words, when an increase in the price of Y leads to an increase in the demand of X, for instance, with the increase in price of tea, demand of coffee will increase. Second, negative. In case of complementary goods, cross elasticity of demand is negative. A proportionate increase in price of one commodity leads to a proportionate fall in the demand of another commodity because both are demanded jointly. Third, zero. Cross elasticity of demand is zero when two goods are related to each other. For instance, increase in price of car does not affect the demand of cloth. Thus, cross elasticity of demand is zero. 2.10 Law of supply. Supply is defined as the total quantity of a product or service that the marketplace can offer. The quantity supplied is the amount of a product or service that suppliers are willing to supply at a given price. This relationship between price and the amount of a good or service supplied is known as the supply relationship. Supply and demand is perhaps one of the most fundamental concepts of economics, and it is the backbone of a market economy. Demand refers to how much quantity of a product or service is desired by buyers. The quantity demanded is the amount of a product people are willing to buy at a certain price. The relationship between price and the quantity demanded is known as the demand relationship. Supply represents how much the market can offer. The quantity supplied refers to the amount of certain good producers are willing to supply when receiving a certain price. The correlation between price and how much of a good or service is supplied to the market is known as the supply relationship. Price, therefore, is a reflection of supply and demand. The basic law of supply is that as the price of a commodity rises, so producers expand their supply into the market. A supply curve shows a relationship between price and quantity a firm is willing and able to sell. A supply curve is drawn assuming ceteris paribus, that is, all factors influencing supply are being held constant except price. If the price of the good varies, we move along a supply curve. In the diagram, as the price rises from P1 to P2, there is an expansion of supply. If the market price falls from P2 to P3, there would be a contraction of supply in the market. Businesses are responding to price signals when making their output decisions. The four basic laws of supply and demand are: first, if demand increases and supply remains unchanged, then it leads to a higher equilibrium price and higher quantity. Second, if demand decreases and supply remains unchanged, then it leads to lower equilibrium price and lower quantity. Third, if supply increases and demand remains unchanged, then it leads to lower equilibrium price and higher quantity. Fourth, if supply decreases and demand remains unchanged, then it leads to higher equilibrium price and lower quantity. There are three main reasons why supply curve for most products are drawn as sloping downwards from left to right, giving a positive relationship between the market price and quantity supplied. First, the profit motive. When the market price rises, it becomes more profitable for businesses to increase their output. Higher prices send signals to the firm that they can increase their profits by satisfying demand in the market. Second, production and costs. When output expands, a firm's production costs rise. Therefore, a higher price is needed to justify the extra output and cover these extra costs of production. Third, new entrants coming into the market. Higher prices may create an incentive for other businesses to enter the market, leading to an increase in supply. 2.11 Demand forecasting. Demand forecasting refers to the prediction or estimation of a future situation under a given constraint. In a sense, knowledge of future demand is crucial for both new firms and those planning to expand their scale of production. Since output is to be sold, virtually nothing can be produced overnight. Sales forecasts are required to determine the quantity of production. Therefore, a forecast is a prediction of a future event. It implies measurement of that event, which may not be 100% accurate since that much accuracy is not possible in view of the uncertainties of the future. A demand forecast will help the manager take effective decisions. Objectives of demand forecasting. The major short-run decisions are: first, purchase of inputs; second, level of inventory; third, setting up sales targets; fourth, distribution network; fifth, management of working capital; sixth, price policy; and seventh, promotion policy. The major long-run decisions are: first, expansion of existing capacity; second, diversification of the product mix; third, change of location of plant; fourth, long-run borrowings; and fifth, manpower planning. Requirements for good demand forecasting. Demand forecasting for a commodity cannot be made merely through guesswork. It requires a detailed understanding of the current and future conditions of the market in which the firms producing the commodity operate. Such understanding can be obtained through market research. For easy understanding, we may list the elements of basic requirements of demand forecasting as below. A. Elements connected to consumers. First, total number of consumers. Second, distribution of consumer products. Third, total purchasing power and per capita household income. Fourth, income elasticities. Fifth, consumer taste, social customs. Sixth, consumer marketing details, that is where they do buy and when, etc. Seventh, effect of design, color, etc. on consumers' preferences. B. Element concerning the suppliers. First, current level of sales. Second, current stock of goods. Third, trends in sale and stocks. Fourth, market share. Fifth, pattern of seasonal fluctuations. Sixth, research and development trends. Seventh, company strength and weaknesses. Eighth, new product possibilities. C. Elements concerning the market. First, the effect of price change, that is price elasticity. Second, product characteristics. Third, identification of competitive and complementary products. Fourth, number and nature of competitors. Fifth, forms of market competition. Sixth, general price levels. Seventh, prices of similar goods. Steps involved in demand forecasting. To have an efficient, accurate, and meaningful forecast, the management should proceed according to a systematic plan. The various steps involved in demand forecasting are discussed as follows. First, clarity of objectives. To have an efficient forecasting, one should have a clarity of objectives. It will remove the difficulties involved in the way of forecasting. A firm may use the concept to determine various things, viz. allocation of funds for sales promotion, fixation of price, inventory control, etc. The forecasting will differ for each and every approach. Second, selection of goods. Before forecasting, the entrepreneur might have to select the goods for which the forecasting has to be made, whether it is for consumer and capital goods for existing goods. Third, selection of method. Another step involved in demand forecasting is the selection of method, according to which forecasting must be made. In fact, the scope and success of a particular method depends upon the area of investigation, degree of accuracy required, availability of data, etc. Fourth, interpreting the results. The last but not least is the interpretation of the results. It is based on certain assumption. If there happens to be a change in the assumptions involved in forecasting, the revision of forecast will become almost inevitable. Methods or techniques of demand forecasting. Demand forecasting is a difficult exercise as consumers' behavior is most unpredictable. It is motivated and influenced by multiplicity of factors. Economists and statisticians have developed several methods of demand forecasting. These methods are explained as follows. A. Consumers' survey method. This method uses the most direct approach to demand forecasting by directly asking the consumers about their future consumption plan. In this method, the burden of forecasting goes to the buyer. This method is very simple and free from statistical burden. It is of three types. First, complete enumeration survey. Second, sample survey. Third, end-use method. First, complete enumeration survey. In the complete enumeration survey, the probable demands of all the consumer for the forecast period as given by consumer themselves are summed up to have the sales forecast for the forecast period. For example, if there are n consumers and their probable demands for commodity X in the forecast period are X1, X2, X3 and so on till Xn, the sales forecast would be X equals to X1 plus X2 plus X3 and till Xn. Second, sample survey. Under the sample survey method, the probable demand expressed by each selected unit summed up to get the total demand of sample units in the forecast period. It is then blown up to find the total demand in the market. That is, the total sample demand is multiplied by the ratio of number of consuming units in the sample. This method, when carefully applied, gives good results, especially for the new products and brands. Proper care should be taken in choosing a sample size which should not be too big. The advantages of the sample survey over complete enumeration method are: 1. This method is simple. Second, this method is less costly. And third, less possibility of data error. B. End-use method. The sale of a product under consideration is projected on the basis of a demand survey of the industries using this product as an intermediate product. The demand for the final product is the end-use demand for the intermediate product used in the production of this final product. However, an intermediate product may have many end-use, like steel, which can be used in agricultural machinery, construction, etc. It may have demand in both domestic and international markets. The demands for final consumption and exports, net of imports, are estimated through some other forecasting method, and the demand for intermediate use is estimated through a survey of its user industries regarding their production plans and input-output efficiencies. Then the sum of final consumption demand and export demand, net of imports, of any commodity can be obtained with the help of an input-output model. C. Opinion poll method. The opinion poll methods aim at collecting opinions of those who are supposed to possess knowledge of the market. Example, sales representatives, sales executives, professional marketing experts, and consultants. The opinion poll method consists of 1. Expert opinion method. 2. Delphi method. 3. Market studies and experiments. D. Statistical methods. In the theory of demand forecasting, the statistical techniques have proved to be useful. Statistical techniques are used to maintain objectivity as well as precision in demand forecasting. Here, statistical methods have been explained which utilize historical and cross-section data for estimating long-term demand. Statistical methods are considered to be superior techniques of demand estimation for the following reasons. A. The element of subjectivity in this method is minimum. B. Method of estimation is scientific. C. Estimation is based on the theoretical relationship between the dependent and independent variables. D. Estimates are relatively more reliable. E. Estimation involves smaller cost. Merits of consumer survey method. The advantages of this method are as under. 1. This method does not require mathematical calculations. Second, this method is based on the first-hand knowledge of the salesman. Third, it is useful to forecast the sales of new products. Fourth, this method does not require any historical data. Demerits. Although this method has certain advantages, yet it suffers from the following disadvantages, which are A. It is only a subjective approach. B. It is suitable only for short-term forecasting. C. Salesmen lack vision and may not foresee the influence of several unknown factors. D. Individual industry will have to depend on some other method to estimate the future demand of its product for final consumption. Qualities of a good demand forecasting. The world is changing rapidly with the introduction of new techniques of production. As there are several methods of demand forecasting, it is essential to notice some qualities of a good forecasting. However, following criteria should be adopted for forecasting. 1. Simplicity. Any mathematical techniques of demand forecasting may be simple so that it may deliver better results. Second, accuracy. For forecasting, statistical data is prerequisite. Therefore, data may be undertaken which is accurate, correct, and dependable. Third, easy availability. The results of a demand forecast must be easily available and well understood. Fourth, economy. Another quality of a good demand forecast is that it must be economical. Generally, a firm keeps a balance between the benefits and the extra cost of providing the improved forecasting. Importance of demand forecasting. Demand forecasting is of great significance for decision making in modern business. The main points of importance are summarized below. 1. Planning of production. It is a prerequisite for planning of production in a firm. A firm has to expand its capacity according to the likely demand for its output. Otherwise, the capacity will be wasted. Second, sales forecasting. Sales forecasting depends much on the demand forecast. Promotional efforts of the firm should be based on demand forecasting. Third, control on business activities. For satisfactory control of business inventories, raw material, intermediate goods, semi-finished products, and finished products, need regular estimates of future requirements which can be derived only from the demand forecast. Fourth, decision or policy making. Demand forecasting is necessary for deciding about the growth rate of the firm, its long-term investment programs, and financial planning. Fifth, useful for stability. Demand forecasting is useful for stabilizing the production and employment within the firm. If dependable demand forecasts are available for the firm, then the firm can more easily design its business operation to counter the cyclical and seasonal changes in the demand for its good. To select the appropriate forecasting technique, the manager or the forecaster must be able to accomplish the following. 1. Define the nature of the forecasting problem. Second, explain the nature of the data under investigation. Third, describe the capabilities and limitations of potentially useful forecasting techniques. Fourth, develop some predetermined criteria on which the selection decision can be made. 2.12 Case Studies. Case study number 1. Mr. Ashish Ranjan, an economist in XYZ Limited, has estimated that if there is 1% increase in the price of textiles, the demand for textiles would come down by 1.2%. Similarly, if the food prices goes up by 1%, the demand for textiles would decline by 0.96%. Finally, if there is 1% increase in the share of agriculture in the national income, then the demand for textiles would go up by 0.4%. Price elasticity is an area where active intervention by the mills can contribute to the expansion of demand. The margins in textile business, as shown by CII and Agrol and Vishakha study, vary from 26 to 46%. This includes margins of manufacturers, wholesalers, semi-wholesalers and retailers. If the distribution system could be rationalized so as to bring down the final price of cloth, then by exploiting price elasticity alone, demand can go up. Questions. Question number 1. Identify the various types of demand elasticities relevant to textile demand in India. Question number 2. What role have been visualized for price elasticity of demand for textiles in India? Question number 3. If price of cloth is reduced by 14%, how much will be the demand increase? Case study number 2. Bikaji, the number one choice of consumer. Abstract. The caselet Bikaji, the number one choice of consumers, explains how Bikaji, which markets snack products in India, became the primary choice among Indian consumers. Bikajis came out with different products which suited the taste of various ethnic and geographical groups. The caselet deals with how the company used the 4 P's effectively to influence consumer decision making. Issues. 1. Ways in which a company can influence consumer decision making. Second, importance of the pricing strategy in the ready-to-eat snack market in India. Third, the need to offer products which suit the taste of a heterogeneous group. Questions. Question number 1. What were the ways in which Bikajis influenced the decision making of the consumers? Question number 2. What were the marketing strategies followed by the Bikajis to ensure that its product became the number one choice of the consumers? 2.13 Summary. This unit has presented the basic elements of demand, consumer preference pattern, and utility function, demand forecasting. The law of demand states that other factors held constant, the quantity demanded is inversely related to price. Other factors that affect demand are 1. Income of consumers, 2. Price of related products, 3rd. Taste and preferences, and 4th. Number of buyers. The law of demand also verified with the help of marginal utility and indifference curve analysis. The main points highlighted in this unit are: Number 1. A change in the quantity demanded refers to a movement along a particular demand curve caused by a change in the price of the good. It is also known as expansion and contraction of demand. Number 2. A change in demand refers to a shift of demand curve that resulting from change in consumer preferences, income, or prices of related goods. Number 3. When increase in the price of one good results in increased demand of other goods, then the two goods are said to be substitutes. Number 4. When increase in the price of one good results in decreased demand of other goods, then the two goods are said to be complements. Number 5. When the price of one good increases or decreases, but the demand of other goods does not change, then the two goods are unrelated. Number 6. When the consumer consumes additional units of a good, the marginal utility of that good declines. This is known as the law of diminishing marginal utility. Number 7. As an additional unit of a good provides lesser and lesser utility to the consumer will buy these additional units only at a lower price. Hence, the law of demand states that more is demanded at a lower price. Number 8. A consumer maximizes his total utility by allocating his income among goods on the basis of the law of equimarginal utility, which states that for best allocation of income, the marginal utility per rupee in each good must be equal. Number 9. An indifference curve is the locus of points representing all such combinations of the two goods which gives equal satisfaction. Number 10, indifference curves have the properties of negative slope, convexity, and non-intersection. A higher indifference curve indicates higher levels of utility. Thanks for listening.